that, or if she is, Theresa May's not getting the message. Or is it possible, and I have to ask myself, that the Queen actually thinks Brexit is a good idea? Is it possible? Well, if it were the following, the Queen might think it's a good idea because it's become like an ego battle. Hey, I'm the Queen, it's UK, I'm the Queen of all of it. Get off of my patch, we voted, so we're going to do it. It might have come down to sort of ego thing going on with her. In which case I would humbly say that that's not the correct path to go down. That's taking the Tiberius route. And, not a good idea. That way leads to the destructions of countries and monarchies and dynasties. I think if the Queen were that arrogant, I say if, and that's what's secretly going on behind the scenes, and it is possible that she's yelling at Theresa May, get on with that Brexit, and that's why she's always trying to push her plan through, and that she's become a fanatical Brexiteer, it's possible. There are some claims that she had a stand-up row with Nick Clegg over this, and that Nick Clegg, a liberal with a certain degree of considerable intelligence, said, no, Brexit's a terrible idea, I won't support it. And apparently the Queen lost her temper with him. I also would like to interview Nick Clegg and find out if that's true. It might explain why he's left the country. He could be standing with us in this fight and giving great speeches. But if he'd had a stand-up row with the Queen and the Queen said, no, Brexit's happening, that's probably why he's gone. He thought, why should I bother, if it's run by such a woman? I don't know, I suspend judgment. I'm just saying that this is something of some of the dots I've been trying to join up. The other thing I want to say and reflect on is that the Queen is technically the head of the military and intelligence hierarchy of the UK. And I think that this probably has turned her head over the years into thinking that her primary job is to run UK Military Enterprise, Inc. She likes to launch battleships and, she takes her role, as do all the other royals, as a military commander quite seriously. And she likes her trooping of colour and the troops going up and down and the red arrows flying overhead, and it's all very military. Well, with all due respect to the Queen, I don't think that is the only, or indeed even should be the primary function of a monarch. It's not to simply organise the armies. We need to be moving in the direction of a world in which there are fewer armies needed, fewer weapons needed, and fewer military displays. In keeping the United Kingdom together and keeping us as part of the European Union, we're moving in a direction of peace. We're moving in a direction of less militarism, and much smaller kind of armies would be needed. And the idea of a European army, well, it's not stupid. It's just that we share material and we all provide some brigades. What's wrong with that idea? So I'm just concerned that if she's thinking, no, I'm the great military chief of UK military enterprises, and I'm going to support Theresa May pushing Brexit through whatever the cost, then I think she's taken the wrong path, and I think she's going down the Tiberius route, who was exactly the same. He saw his role as the military emperor, and that's why they were always conquering and enslaving other peoples. That's why the Jews didn't like them in their country, and that's why the Druids of Britain didn't like their conquest, which happens, by the way, the next emperor after Caligula is Claudius, who's a relief in that he's not personally corrupt and evil like the previous ones, but he still invades Britain and conquers it. And the Druids didn't really appreciate that. Anyway, I'm saying, and I'm thinking that whatever happens, and once Brexit is stopped and we get actually the parliamentary will of the people expressed, and we get the will of a second referendum, we do live in a democracy, not a totalitarian monarchy. And even if the Queen has decided Brexit's the best thing in the world, we the people have the right to say, you're wrong, ma'am, We're not buying it. You can take your military and play your game somewhere else. But we're staying in the European Union because we love peace. We want a much smaller expenditure on the military. We want a peace institute in London, part of the think tanks like Chatham House and so on. We want to always have some experts on hand who can give us the peace option next time conflict breaks out in Syria or whatever. We don't want to drop expensive bombs paid for by Philip May and his cronies. We want to send mediators in. We want to be part of a European Union mediation service. We want to solve the problems of the Ukraine and Syria and Israel and Palestine peacefully. And so I think that's the direction to move. And I think the British monarchy needs to be trimmed down a bit. I think it should be much more on a Scandinavian model of monarchy, like the Dutch or Danish or Swedish monarchs. I don't think it needs quite so much trimmings, and I think they should get out more and meet normal people much more often. I mean, I have nothing against the monarchy. As I say, I've met them and I've been to events with them, and I think they're intelligent people, and I hope, God knows, if they could listen to some of my work, they might appreciate it. And what I'm saying is actually for their best interest, because if we do Brexit, and if the country starts breaking up, and if Scotland becomes independent through struggle and strife, and if Ireland becomes united through very serious struggle and strife, I don't think the monarchy is going to survive. I don't think that dynasty of monarchs, the Windsors, are going to survive. They might survive for a while as King Charles of England, but I think the Celtic nations are going to pull away, and they're going to say, we don't actually want this system. It couldn't even keep the country together. It just carried on doing its ridiculous military parades, like bandsmen on the Titanic. So what I'm actually saying is, with all due respect, is as I wrote when I said in my letter to the Queen, I said, I'm not a member of your Privy Council. They seem to all be telling you fibs. I'm telling you the truth, man. I pray for them actually, because they are a symbol of stability, and I want to keep our country together. As an arch-druid, I'm not anti-monarchy, but I am saying they have to live by the cosmic code of honour and truth and dharma to be worthy of that great thing. Otherwise, there will be consequences which would be extremely turbulent. The alternative is if this Queen has become literally, say, Brexit fixated, and then the people say no way, then she should just abdicate and let Charles take over, who seems a much more intelligent, more modern kind of thinker in some respects. I mean, I don't want to... I'm not making judgments, I'm just saying that's another option, And I did say that the Queen should threaten to abdicate rather than pass Brexit. If I was the monarch, that's what I would do. Because if you know your country's about to be self-destroyed, you have a duty to stop that. And threatening to abdicate is one way. If you don't like it, well, you can have Charles. I don't think Charles would. He's an intelligent man. There's no way he could support Brexit. Right. I've talked about a number of things. I want to move on now because time is not infinite in supply. I think that what we should be doing is putting friendship at the heart of what it is to build a country. One of the sad things about what Brexit has done is it's broken friendship between people in the same family or the same town. They all take such diametrically opposed views. Friendship should be at the heart of what it is to be British. When I was growing up in Brighton and teaching at the University of London and studying there, I tried to be friendly with people. I'm a friendly kind of person. And to do that, you have to tell the truth, be honourable, be kind, be non-violent, and be loving. And this is why I launched a love journal for my institute when I was at the University of London teaching at the Institute of Education. and given the job of creating a peace institute, I said, well, what will our journal be devoted to? Well, it has to be love, I said, because that's how we're going to create a peaceful world. Love is the only thing that is even more interesting than war and violence. I mean, people love soldiers. They love violence. It's heroic. It's, death-defying. But love is even more exciting. It requires as much skill and precision to be a great lover as it is to be a great warrior. And to be a cosmic lover in the sense of like a prophet or sage or saint, as much as being a great general. So we should be going down that path, the path of love, the path that Christ showed us, and the path that Buddha showed us, and that the Sufis teach, and all the other great spiritual paths of mankind. That is the path of love, and that's why I'm speaking out against this path of fear and hatred Brexit has thrown up for us. Now, many people say, no, you're wrong, Thomas, because there are conspiracies and Brexiteers are very good people and we're all fighting against Big Brother. And unfortunately, I don't think it's correct. It's an inversion. I've got into this. Of course, there are things about the European Union that need changing. But to change something, you have to love it first. Let's love the good things about the European Union. The fact that it exists, the fact that it's kept the peace, the fact that it has intelligent people who've been working away there for a long time. Let's work with that, let's love it, and then understand how to help improve it even more. Okay, one of the things the European Union is quite good at is environmentalism and environmental awareness. And as a philosopher, an eco-philosopher, inspired by people like Henryk Skolimowski and John Francis Phipps and many others over the years, I think that we have to put our ethical decisions into the wider web of nature and our responsibility for nature. We live in a world, we share it with many dharmas, many beings, the whole ecosystem, the natural world. And the European Union is trying to do its bit. And there are, difficult issues like fracking and GMO, and which Europe is standing up against. And Sweden and Germany and Denmark are very strong on environmental legislation and creating, non-pollutive energy sources, getting rid of nuclear and so on and coal. So we're pioneering in Europe a kind of greener future. And I think the European scientists are cracking sources of energy. I think CERN and places will one day crack gravity as an energy source. I have a belief in there is a non-polluting, non-harmful energy source available. And Newton, co-discoverer discoverer of gravity, I think that's probably one of the sources we should look at, and we should be sponsoring European scientists at the highest level to do this research. And one of the most stupid things about Brexit is it'll make it more difficult to do that kind of advanced research. This is why Sir Paul Nurse, my colleague, who's won the Nobel Prize for biology and a great man and was president of the Royal Society, every single member of the Royal Society has said Brexit is mad. Any scientist with a brain knows it is, because the European Union facilitates good science, and we need more science. I'm not a sort of Luddite that says smash all the machines and go back to living in caves. I believe in science as a project. I'm a fan of Sir Francis Bacon and Descartes and the scientific revolution and Newton. I've studied them all in great detail, and I've lectured on the history of science. We need more science, not less, and we need better science and greener science. And this is where I oppose Trump and his American policies of, spend now, pollute now, and devil take the future. His completely cavalier attitude to what he did with the water protectors of the Sioux Nation and other Indian tribes. They were trying to say, look, the environment's sacred. His response is just, push the pipeline through. No, we need to rethink our relationship with nature. We need to love nature and be aware that we're part of her. and our love for her is as strong as her love for us. This is why Caroline Lucas is such a good MP. She's the MP from my old hometown of Brighton. She speaks with the authority of all the people that voted Green everywhere in the country, and that's quite a few. And I think we need a constitutional amendment in Parliament so that it's proportional. So, you know, if so many million vote Green, they get that many MPs. If so many million vote Tory, they get that many. I think it should be proportional to the overall aggregate number of votes for a given party, and then the party come up with a slate that could represent different constituencies. It could be worked out. My academic professional body, the Conflict Research Society, has come up with proposals for voting reform that can make these things possible. It's a form of proportional representation, but also keeping the idea of representing a constituency and so on. Although I have problems with that, because at the moment in law you're not allowed to write to an MP of a constituency you're not living in, which I think is daft. It blocks communication. So we need to rethink all that. Anyway, Caroline Lucas and the Green perspective on Brexit is vital, and she's saying, please, no Brexit. It's against our interests as a nation. We're part of an ecosystem. We're just offshore this wonderful continent called Europe. I now live there. I mean, this is a wonderful continent, folks, and Britain is a wonderful part of the entire ecosystem that we cohabit. When there's bad weather in Devon, you know, there's normally bad weather here, and vice versa. So if we're going to fight climate change, if we're going to do the science necessary to convince people that there is a serious threat and that this is the way to deal with it, if we're going to invent new energy sources together, if we're going to deal with how to decommission the nuclear energy industry of the planet and then provide an alternative that is non-polluting, if we're going to deal with how to store all that spent nuclear fuel, if we're going to deal with ways of solving, you know, the agricultural problems of the planet, that there's enough food of the right kind to feed everybody, you know, and all the other problems that the environment throws up, then we're going to need to work together in a collaborative, scientific kind of way, and also drawing on the spiritual wisdom of the elders, the shamans, the guardians of nature. And the best modern scientists are now learning from the shamans. David Peat, a friend of mine in Italy, a great man, Canadian, who wrote Blackfoot Physics, has looked at how the physics of the Native American people of Canada are so similar to the findings of quantum physics. It's like they've been looking over each other's shoulders. I'd like to see more of that kind of interplay between primal shaman knowledge and modern scientific knowledge, and it's happening. That's what the Global Green University stands for, and that's why I'm speaking as rector of that, amongst my other hats, and saying from that perspective, Brexit is just retrograde and stupid and must be stopped, and please, anyone with a scientific background, you know, get involved, come on the march. A lot of young people are marching against climate change, and I think that's wonderful, and they're marching against the factors that are precipitating chaotic and destructive climate change. They should be therefore marching against Brexit, because that is going to precipitate a lot of future problems. So it's the same cause, it's the same march, actually, and I sincerely hope that all the eco-marchers, youngsters, I mean, if I was Minister of Education in the UK, I'd give them all a day off. Well, actually, it's a Saturday, the march, so they've got a day off. There are certain types of people I know and respect who are what I would call green anarchists. I've met a few green people that say, no, I'm against the EU, it's too big. I want to go back to small is beautiful, Schumacher's ideas, and that's why I voted against the EU. And I call them, they are really green anarchists, and there's some wonderful people among them, I don't doubt that, and they, you know, live with integrity and so on. However, I would say with all humility that they haven't thought this through correctly, because you see, being a green anarchist is lovely, and living in a sort of fairy world of perpetual Glastonbury Festival type consciousness. yes, I'd love to live in that world too. I'll see you in the green anarchist heaven. But the trouble is how we get there. And if we go down the Brexit route, the hypothesis is that all the nasty big corporations, all the really evil Tiberius types are going to leave us alone. We'll be able to turn into the island of blessed saints, the island of Glastonbury festivals every weekend, and everybody living under their own fig tree and growing their own 10 acres of food or whatever. That's the vision of the green anarchist. The trouble is that won't happen, because to get there from where we are, by getting out of the EU, it's like, to take the metaphor, it's like you're happy you've got rid of Tiberius, God's seen him off, and then you get Caligula. You see, the people that are going to take over the UK are not going to be the green anarchists, the lovely, friendly, soft as a bunny type people. It's going to be the Caligulas that take over, and they're already positioning, and they're already taking over. That's what we're seeing in Parliament, the coup of the Caligulas. And they are doing it because they want the money, they want to control the wealth, they're going to control the army, they're going to control the police force. These are the people talking about, after Brexit we'll just clobber the people. They can have a few food banks, meanwhile we'll be running the show. And they're going to use the army and the police to literally clamp down. Any anti-Brexit resistance will be called riots, and before long people will be arrested and stuck in camps. That's what happens when Caligula's run the show. So the lovely green anarchist pacifist type that is a vegan and won't say boo to a goose, who thinks that we're going to jump straight into paradise if we get rid of the EU, is in for a very nasty surprise. I just think that argument is flawed, and that we have to work with the real politics of the real world, which does have financial concerns and banks and insurance companies and all the rest, and we have to work to blend the green anarchist long-term vision with the policies that can be agreed at an EU level, and that is what's happening. The green movement in Europe is very far advanced, as I've said, in many of the countries. It's actually in the government in several countries. And therefore, coming out of the European Union from a green perspective is, it's like, walking backward off a cliff blindfold, expecting to be rescued by Caligula. It's not going to happen. Okay, moving on. I just want to say commemoration of the fact that yesterday, the 16th of March, the Cathars of Montségur were finally captured and put in the flames. I was there last year on pilgrimage with the Mary Magdalene Studies Association. We went down, had a conference down near there. And it's something I've been studying, I'm very interested in. And the Cathars of the Gnostic Christians of the southwest of France are very interesting, and their ideas seem to go back to very early roots in Gnostic Christianity. This is why I can't accept this kind of very simplistic Protestant anti-Brexit idea that we're against Europe because we're Protestants. There have been many Protestants in Europe, and Calvin himself, who these Presbyterian types in the DUP supposedly respect, was a Frenchman. There have been many great Protestant thinkers. Actually, I think most of them came from Europe. Luther and Calvin and people, and Zwingli. Europe is full of very deep, profound thinking types, intellectuals, if you don't mind my saying so. And Calvin studied near me at, he was in, university in Bourges for a time of his career, and he was saved for a time by Margarita of Angoulême, who was the sister of the king, Francis I, who was the patron of Leonardo da Vinci, one of my heroes. But Margarita of Angoulême, respected Calvin's work as a scholar, and as he'd started out as a lawyer. So Europe has come to the view that intellectual freedom is the best way to go. It's called liberalism as a concept that Montesquieu and others wrote about, that people have to have freedom of thought. It's the best way to run a society, because then we come up with truth. What I'm seeing with the whole Brexit farrago in Parliament and Theresa May is it's the opposite. It's suppression of thought. It's suppression of intellectuals. Literally every single person that seems to be supporting Brexit is an anti-intellectual. That tells me something? And I'll tell you what it reminds me of is when I went to Auschwitz. I went, on pilgrimage and went round the museum. All the huts have been turned into museums. With photographs and things on the walls, and it's a sobering experience. When I went to the Polish hut, which I found very moving, because Auschwitz began as a prisoner of war camp for Polish officers. It wasn't initially for the Jews. It was only later, after a year or two, that had been running. Because first, when the Nazis invaded Poland in 1939, they rounded up all the Polish officers and intellectuals, teachers, lawyers, judges, priests, sent to Auschwitz. If you said boo to a goose, you went there. And they deliberately tried to kill the intellectuals of Poland. And there's Himmler gave a speech, there's a photograph of him giving it, in Poland within a few weeks of the Nazi takeover. And he says, we're going to change the education system of Poland. From now on, we're only going to teach them basic literacy, basic numeracy, just enough to be able to work. We're not going to teach them history or any of the humanities. We don't want them thinking. This was a private speech given to the elite Germans who were going to be running occupied Poland. We don't want them thinking. And I was shocked when I read that. But a lot of pennies dropped, because I realised that's why the Nazis didn't like intellectuals. That's why Brexit types don't like intellectuals, because they think, they join up ideas. The very word intellectual means that you lect interly. Inter is to join up, connect. Lect is lexis, logos, logic, is thought, is pure. What Heraclitus calls the fire of the logos is the absolute. Now an intellectual is someone that can join up the different scattered bits of the logos and put them into connection with each other. Through language, through speech, which is how the logos communicates on our level of being. And of course the Nazis, who any oppressive, dictatorial, totalitarian regime that wants to control us will try and stop that work. And there it was, in your face in Auschwitz. And that's why they hated the Jews, because so many Jews were brilliant thinkers and intellectuals. They'd been studying their Talmud and drawing connections between all the different bits of the Bible, like my hero in Troyes in France, Rashi, the great biblical commentator, who wrote a commentary in the 1200s that's still authoritative today, one of the great French medieval rabbis. Well, no, the Jews didn't like these kind of people. They're too clever. Well, I do. I respect all the great intellectuals of all cultures. And that's why I'm against Brexit. And that's why I was against the destruction of the Cathars. And that's why I'm utterly opposed to this madman in New Zealand who's just shot 49 Muslims at prayer. I mean, what a bestial and cruel and ignorant act. How dare somebody? This is an anti-intellectual. He's never read his Quran. He hasn't got a clue about the great Islamic philosophical teachings. I weep and lament for my Muslim brothers and sisters who were gunned down by a madman who justifies it in terms of white racism, and he quotes Trump. I did it because I'm a white racist. Oh dear, dear, dear. I mean, it's shocking. I mean, it's beyond shocking, and it's the same mentality that's brought us Brexit. It's the same guy. The same kind of thinking. It's the same kind of thinking that shot Joe Cox, the Labour MP, against Brexit. Now, as a Druid, the Druids were the priests and elders of the Celtic tribes, who were, if you want, white, although actually were made of spirit, so you can't, put a colour on us. The true soul of somebody is as Newton said, is the absolute, the white light from which all the colours come. So, as a Druid, I say this man has nothing to do with the white races. They have no authority to speak or commit these acts. And he's inspired by this guy Breivik, who again, in Norway, I think it's shocking that he can reach out and contact people. He should be cut off, until his attitude has completely changed and it's showing no sign. He still believes that shooting innocent people is good policy. I mean, this is a man who shot the children of social democrats in Sweden in a horrific attack. And, these people are ill-educated and barbaric, and there's no excuse for it. And the only solution to it is deep, proper, serious education. And that's why I'm doing my commentary on the Quran. I've done the first Meccan surahs. I'm now working through the Medina surahs each day. And I recommend people to listen to my commentary on the Quran. If you're thinking of going out and shooting lots of people in a mosque because you don't like Muslims, listen to my Quran, and I think you might stop. You might change your mind. It's a nightmare. So instead of going down that route, we have to go down the route of love. It's interesting that Steve Bannon is also Islamophobic and hates Islam. A lot of the Brexiteers who voted, they've never heard of the Quran or read it. They just think, because they've been brainwashed and fed this idea that all Muslims are terrorists, they think they're on a morally superior plane. They think Europe is being swamped by Muslims, and therefore they have to get out, shut the drawbridge, and be a pure good nation again. Well, hang on. There are millions of Muslims already in Britain, and some of them are my dearest friends. I mean, I've studied and sat at their feet. I used to teach at the Muslim college, and in Ealing. I have dear friends. Dr. Zaki Badawi was one of my mentors and a very good friend who set up that college. I've been to many mosques. I've spoken in Islamic circles. I've done Sufi worship with them, and we're all on a journey, my friends, together, whether we call ourselves outwardly Muslim or Catholic or Cathar or Druid or pagan or whatever our outer designation, Jewish or Reformed or Conservative Jew, whatever. We're all on a journey which is like in the Kabbalah, the Tree of Life. We're trying to get up and interconnect all the bits of the Tree of Life. These spiritual disciplines are just paths to enable us to do that. And some do it better than others. Sufism is one of the most powerful and direct currents that can take you to the beloved. So is the Kabbalah, so is Druidry, so is Buddhism. And I want to end this discourse with a little look at another saint of the day, because as I said, on the 17th of March, we celebrate not just St. Patrick, but others. And today we celebrate, for Buddhism, Fa Tseng. He lived from 643 to 712 AD. He was from Sogdian origin, Central Asia, like a sort of Persian type, a small number of people speaking an Indo-European language, but he ended up in China and became one of the most important of all the Chinese Buddhist figures. And he founded a tradition of Chinese Buddhism known as the Hua Yen school of Buddhism. And it's a very profound teaching. It has influenced not just China, but in Korea and Japan. And he commented on a particular scripture, which is called the flower garland scripture. It's not the Lotus Sutra, which everybody's heard of. It's an equivalent to the Lotus Sutra, but slightly different. And it's called the Flower Garland Sutra. And it has 45 chapters in its Tibetan recension. It's a